What up? What up? What up? Peace and
What up?
reparations.
What up, though?
What up, though? Man, another Tuesday night,
Yeah, two in a row.
two in a row. Yeah, yeah. So, bro, we got a jam-packed night. You know what I'm saying for our people. We're gonna try to stay on point, concise as much as possible. We're gonna be covering some of the stuff in the news today. You know, it's been in the news, right? Obviously, what's going on. The big headline is the P Diddy trial, right? Then also we're gonna talk about what's going on with Tory Lanez and Meg Thee Stallion. New evidence, brother almost got murdered in jail, assassin. Looks like it was kind of like a hit. Um, and then we're gonna go into it's been five actually on what was it 2 days ago has been that's crazy, man. It's been 5 years since the death of George Floyd, right? We're gonna look and see what has really happened. You know what I'm saying? Like, are we better off? Changed. You know, we're gonna cover that and look into what's going on in Minneapolis and just talk about it. The general the general situation just as at hand as far as policing is concerned and just race politics, right? I think we actually kind of went backwards in my opinion, right? Um, so yeah, Step, what you got, man?
Yeah, man. I didn't realize it was 5 years either until there was something on the news talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for me, I know for you, and like for the show, right?
Right,
Because we do have, two Freeman brothers who are part of our group.
right.
Um, the, it was important discussion for us at the time. Um, the state of race relations and police killing of unarmed black people and all of that stuff. So it's interesting that it's already been 5 years, and so to think about it, and then like you said, to look at whether we're better off 5 years later or what has materially changed for race relations for the black community or any of that stuff as a result of the protests, whatever the laws that were supposed to be passed. It's interesting to kind of dive into and then as far as with the Diddy stuff and the Tory Lane stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you know that's all interesting in different ways and for different reasons. Um, but I'll let you get into the Diddy without stepping on your toes because I don't know where you're going to go with it. But I know I watched a video about it just recently.
Mm-hmm.
Sabby was uh, listening to like Whitney Webb and Suge Knight talking about a bit about Diddy and speculation about whether or not he's actually going to be um, seeing any charges at all. Which who knows really
Mm-hmm.
how well connected he is. But yeah, I'll let you get into it.
Yeah, he obviously ain't that connected because he's going through a trial. You know what I'm saying? He's not that connected, and that's always from we always look at things from a Freedman's perspective, right? And we've seen this the last few years. Tory Lanez, Puff Daddy, R. Kelly, like they're making Freedman men well and Tory Lanez isn't, but he pretends to be, right? Right. Um, they're making us the face public enemy number one. So to me, it's all connected. You know what I'm saying? In regards to just the image that black men have all from the time that we became free. Prior during slavery, we were always meant to be like babies. The end of the white public images, we were docile, dumb, not capable to be men. But upon, obviously through the Civil War, with our involvement in the Civil War and fighting along for our freedom, many slave rebellions that happened prior to the Civil War, You know, and once we got the right to vote, right, we were enemy number one, you know, in this country. You know what I'm saying? And all the animus of this country was directed towards us. And George Floyd was just, you know, just a one of the many line, and there's been many since then, right? Of how black men are disposable, you know, at any given time. And you never escape this, irregardless of whatever wealth that you obtain as individuals. You know, you're still part of the group, and the image of the group is, you know, you know, and specifically black males, right? You know, we're really, at any given time we could be snuffed out. You know what I mean? And like I said, economically, physically, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? Are you know, things can, you know, completely, complete fabrications can be made about you. You know, I was thinking, you know, with the brick girl, right? I mean, it's weaponized. You know what I'm saying? I mean, obviously, white women have been doing it for centuries, right? You know, but also black women do it as well. And hence, you know, the Meg Thee Stallion and case. You know what I mean? So we're gonna cover all of this, and we're gonna link all of it together to show you, you know, that, like I said, you know, to show how these things that may be seen very not connected, but they are. So without further ado, unless you got something to say, you know, you want to add on to that, my homie.
No, I'll let you get started.
Yeah, okay.
You know, I could get long-winded, so
yeah. That's I'm sure we're gonna have plenty of opinions. We're gonna get plenty of your opinion and commentary as we delve into this subject matter. So whenever you are ready to share the screen, man. I guess you got to present it to me, right? Or do I share?
No, you
can present. Yeah, man. My bad. You can share screen. You know, I'm from work. Sometimes I forget.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Share screen. I'm going to share the entire screen. I'm going to make sure I share audio. That's always a major thing to do. All right. Share. Let me know when. All right. So we're going to just start off with the facts. What is Sean Combs, you know, also known as Puff Daddy, Diddy, Love, whatever, but I'm, you know, whatever name comes out, but I'm going to go with Sean Combs, right? That's his given name. What is he being charged with? So it says here, so I just did a, you know, Google search, and it broke it down real simple. Combs, 55, is pleaded not guilty in Manhattan federal court to 1 count of racketeering conspiracy, 2 counts of sex trafficking, and 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. The trial, which could last 2 months and will enter its 3rd week of testimony on Tuesday, has drawn intense media attention, which is, again, this is really driving the headlines, at least for everything that I see that comes up in my feed, or what have you. It's all the rage, it's all the talk. You know, there's a lot of salacious things have been, you know, revealed in this case, but primarily, you know, everything has pretty much evolved around his ex-girlfriend of 11 years, Cassie. She was, you know, she was an artist of his at one point in time, and then they engaged in a romantic sexual relationship, if you want to call it, and so much so, you know, and I'm not going to go point by point, but more so I'm going to think about, you know, I'm really going to focus on, are these charges, this charge of racketeering, is this a over abuse by the political system? We you know, the racketeering, the RICO laws were primarily meant for mafia figures, right? So the main gist of racketeering and how it was used by the government was to say, you know, hey, when you have a criminal organization and you got the orders coming from the top, and you have everybody, you know, pyramid, you know, structure going down, you know, usually you could get the, you know, what was happening was that, hey, you could get the lower level guys, the street guys, the lower level lieutenants, but the head remained at the top because it was, you know what I'm saying, the crime boss is not doing the crime directly, right? So the idea was, they made these laws back in like the late 60s, 70s to say, okay, well, irregardless of whether the crime boss or the top people, capos, right, are not actually directly committing the crime, as long as we are able to get one person or show that we have 2 counts of a criminal enterprise, we can get the whole organization, right? We can grab the whole person, even though, like I said, John Gotti, at the top, he did crimes in the past, but you know what I'm saying? Once you get to a certain, you're not getting your hands dirty. So so that's how it was, that's how the government initially, a federal government and this is spread out to state governments, also initially, were using this law. But over a period of time, now it's become a weapon to go after political figures. R. Kelly was hit with this, because another key point about the racketeering laws is that there is no statute of limitations. So let's say, the initial crime or crimes were committed, well beyond the normal statute of limitations, meaning that, from a time a crime is committed, there's certain statutes of limitations, meaning the government has to charge you with those crimes within a certain period of time, right? So, for instance, domestic violence, right? Usually, first and foremost, that is not in the purview of the federal government. Those are in the purview of the state government, right? Or states or local municipalities, right? You know what I mean? And many of those have, like, some, especially if it's misdemeanor, right? A lot of those are like a year, you know what I mean? Maybe 5 years the most, that, from the time the crime was committed to the time that you get brought up on charges, right? But within a racketeering situation, right? Crimes, there is no statute of limitations. You can go 30, 40 years back, on a arson charge or a bribery charge or whatever. There's no statute of limitations. And so what you've seen is that, when the statute of limitations have run out to be, for somebody to be charged criminally at the state level, you know what I mean? Then, they'll come up with this way, this legal gymnastic way of saying, oh, it's racketeering. So, now we can open, now that we're beyond the statute of limitations doesn't prevent us from charging this person. Now we're going to make this person or individuals, right? We're going to throw a RICO case on them, and now we could bring a bunch of stuff in, right? We could bring a bunch of different crimes in that were alleged to happen many, many years after the fact. We're going to turn people's state's witness to tell on each other. Usually that's always an element in it. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, if you're part of the organization, look, we don't want you, we're going to charge you. You could be possibly charged and get sent up the road for your involvement in the criminal organization, but we'll give you a deal if you go ahead and give us the information about the organization, how it functions, how it works. You'll testify. That happened with Sammy the Bull against John Gotti, right? But again, these are generally, criminal organizations selling drugs, prostitution, things of that nature. Then you started seeing them do this, and that it's happened against Kwame Kilpatrick, right? They used a RICO. They said that the mayor was running the mayor's office as a criminal organization. That's how the feds were able to get into it. It got beyond just what the state was able to do, right? And so, he was basically faced a Fed case, you know what I mean, of which he was convicted of. Like I said, R. Kelly, individuals, you know what I mean, politicians, rappers. Just recently happened with I forgot the guy's name, but he getting 15 years of probation. Shoot, man. Anyways, I can't remember because there's so many of them. It will come to me. Somebody will probably bring it up in the chat. In fact, one of the lawyers from that case is actually Brian Steele is actually one of Diddy's lawyers, right? And so so again, they're using this law really to just like, you know, in my opinion, they're abusing it. They're abusing the RICO, and so you know, at the end of the day, a lot of the what's going to determine what's going to ultimately what P Diddy is facing is that can this is was what happened or what is being alleged, is it in the realm of a RICO case? Because he's so a lot of things that's been presented has been, you know, the things that he, you know, obviously we saw what happened in the hotel, you know, happened in 2016 in Cassie. We saw the video, you know what I mean? But that's domestic violence. And again, that's 2016. We're in 2020. We're in 2025, right? When he was charged in 24, right? You know, several years after the fact, some of these allegations, you know, are going way back. You know what I mean? Well past the statute of limitations. And again, it also is not a federal case. But what they're saying is that he's ran his organization, you know, Bad Boy Entertainment, all of the different other conglomerates or, you know, businesses or whatever. He used his organization and his claim to fame, or no, his fame, his obviously his clout, so on and so forth, to pressure Cassie. At this time, they've only shown one person that has ultimately, far as the sex trafficking goes, that he used his power over her and his wealth and access to wealth as like a crime boss, right? And therefore, you know, he in essence sex trafficked his girlfriend or significant other at that time, whatever you want to call her. And so, you know, and he because he with violence, with the, you know, fear of you know, releasing sexual tapes, things of that nature, and so that's where the RICO comes into play. Like she couldn't, you know what I'm saying, she had to, you know, engage in a lot of these sex acts of his, quote unquote, freak offs. And we've gotten a lot of details about that. That's not what we're going to be covering today. More so is going to be, and then all the salacious acts, more so is that, does it make sense that this RICO charge, you know, the one that is going to send him up the road for the rest of his life if he gets convicted of it, you know, is this man a one-man RICO? You know, is this man a one-man criminal organization? Because normally what happens with these type of cases, right? Because it's a organization, you end up seeing multiple people get charged with the racketeering, because it's an org. But they're saying Puffy's a one-man shop that used his, you know, his employees. He used his employees to you know, in a way that was in a criminal organization, right? So, you know, so that's the gist of it, man. Hey, you want to talk? I know I've been going before we get into the videos. I'm sure you have, Stead, you have some things you want to kind of talk about.
Oh yeah, so you know, I actually looked up, you know, what racketeering even was years ago when the situation with what's his name, Tekashi 6ix9ine.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, what is racketeering?
Mm-hmm.
And like you're saying, it's such an old law and the terminology. Like, you know how people say, oh, it's a racket or whatever. This is a racket.
Right.
Like when that was a term that had
back in the
like
30s.
Like it had a common parlance in everyday, you know what I'm saying? Like that was what people used. Like, oh, this is a racket. Like that's when that was created. And so like the definition of racketeering is like when you create a racket or something to that effect. Like, you know,
we can even go into that etymology of the etymology of racket. Yeah, but go ahead.
But like when you breaking it down, I'm listening to you talk about it. What I'm reminded of is like the Mann Act and laws like that, where they were specifically targeted at certain groups or the descendants of freedmen specifically. And so you know, it puts you in a position where they're able to manipulate them or utilize them whenever they so choose. You know what I'm saying? It's not something where you're saying that, for example, um, when a politician or their spouse or family member is making such large sums of money via maybe they have, what do you call them? Um, I'm drawing a blank, but like when they do what is it called? Like when you're consulting,
Yeah.
uh, you know, they have consulting contracts, or
Right.
you know, when they're engaged in behaviors that appear to be corrupt or criminal, you know, kickbacks and things like that. They don't utilize these laws for people like that, right? They utilize those for situations that they want to. And so even like you're talking about Diddy and like, can you be a one man?
Right.
Because that's ultimately
right.
ultimately like that's the same thing we said about R. Kelly. It is not necessarily saying, hey, did he do something wrong, or is he you know, wrong, or but like if you've got to use these kind of convoluted laws to manipulate a charge, do you have a strong enough case to convict him on grounds that would be less suspect? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, what are we really? What's the objective here? Because like I was, so since you didn't bring it up, I'll just talk about it a bit with the Whitney Webb situation. You know, they talked about, like Suge Knight was talking about how, like, or even like how you just said, you were talking about with Rico and how you could basically guilt by association a criminal enterprise. You know, you couldn't get the boss because he was so many steps removed from the actual groundwork that, you know, you couldn't really link him to it. He could always have, you know, plausible deniability. But when you look at the Diddy case, right, there are people above him who really control things. Like, if any of us believe for a second that Diddy had any legitimate control over anything substantial, you mistaken. You know what I'm saying? Yes, he had these parties. Yes, he had a lot of money, or at least he could afford to do things. But like we talked about the connection with Jeffrey Epstein and what was the MCA and
right,
Downtown Records and so you look at all these different tentacles and organized crime and Whitney Webb really breaks it down with her article. But like, he was definitely a tool who was utilized in a lot of the ways that she talks about it, utilized to maybe push a negative image, you know, not only onto the Black community, but to perpetuate these negative behaviors and stereotypes. And so it was something larger than him. Right. You know what I'm saying? And after, like, it reminds me of the movie Superfly, like the original. After you outlive your usefulness, or maybe you get too big for yourself and you want to try to either step away from this aspect of the game that you've been running, or the game that you've been playing, or been a tool in this whole time, or if you want to, you know, maybe you gain a conscience somewhere and say, hey, I can't keep doing this, right? They find a way to get rid of you. They find a way to kill you, or they find a way to imprison you. Because, I mean, he had connections with, you know, the Democratic Party and politicians. He was very well connected in a way that didn't really ever make sense to me, because, you know, I never thought he was a decent guy anyway. Like, just the contracts and the way he manipulated his acts, the people, his artists. He was just not a good person off of that. I mean, and it wasn't just for TV. You saw how he manipulated his artists when you learned about, hey, why such and such? They made good music. How come that you don't hear about them anymore? Right. And so, you know, you caught in a situation where you're not defending the behavior or the actions, if they're, you know, as the trial unfolds, if they're criminal, but you wonder, how much of these charges are legitimate and how much of them are just being used in this way in order to create the justification for all that's been happening so far. You know what I'm saying? Because like somebody else, I forget, it was somebody that just they had some kind of like charges brought up because they said, the individual sexually assaulted them or something years ago. And they complained at the time, and this was like a big artist. I forget who it is now because there's so much stuff, I read and kind of that I'm thinking about. Mm-hmm. And so it makes you wonder, like, why did this person feel comfortable and safe and secure in reporting this incident when it happened? And why do so many women find themselves willing to wait or come out years later or after the person dies, or, maybe their career hasn't been able to materialize in the way that they would have hoped as a result of participating in these actions? Why is there this disconnect? And so I think that's one of those things too. Like, I think it was Kwame Brown talked about it. Like when you go to these LA parties and you go to these houses and there are rooms where everybody's doing all kind of stuff, but you can only go in the rooms if you're willing to participate in the stuff.
Right.
So there might be a room where everybody doing coke, but if you're not doing coke, you can't go in that room. Mm-hmm. There might be a room where people are swinging, but if you're not swinging, you can't go in the room.
Right.
And so, it's like, or even like when you look at politics and we wonder like, hey, how come this politician is always voting this way? Or how come every decision they make, or even better, how come we replace this politician because they made these decisions that we didn't like, and their replacement is making the same decisions? Why is that? It's like people are always bought. They always have dirt on them. Mm-hmm. There's always some type of, and I don't mean this to sound as conspiratorial as it sounds, but like there's some kind of initiation. If you want to be in this organization, you have to do something that compromises your integrity, right? So that you'll never try to buck the system in a way that undermines what we're trying to do. So, again, I'm rambling, or at least I've gotten long-winded, but that's what I'm thinking about as you're talking about this whole process, right? Mm-hmm. Because, him and even Jay-Z, and I'll give Jay-Z credit because he started, as he's gotten older, I noticed he's really taken a more, a more laid back approach to his personal life and his business life. And he's really tried to just be under the radar in a lot of ways. Don't know why. I'm not giving him credit or anything for his personal. I don't know anything about him, but I'm just noticing like he's trying to, it appears to me, he's trying his best to stay out of the limelight for things that are not pertinent to his direct business interests. He's not necessarily trying to align it with anything political. Mm. He's not necessarily trying to align with anything social, which I think he was out of his depth doing anyway. You know what I'm saying? Where, Diddy and all this stuff, I feel like he never really hung that up. He still wanted to be cool. He still wanted to hang out. He had these parties that people were still going to. And so he always left himself open in a weird way. And I say weird, but not, having no clue really where he fits into this equation. If he is, like a conduit for this kind of behavior for, higher powers, not supernatural, but like, mm-hmm. Clive Davis is a name you hear a lot, mm-hmm. who has done a lot of corrupt and illegal and immoral things within the music industry, who is not being brought up on any types of charges, right? Or who is not being mentioned in any kind of way, even though he has a documented history of providing drugs and, doing other kind of psychological and physical and sexual things to different artists, yeah. So I stop right there, but
yeah,
that's all I'm thinking about as you're going through your whole appraisal of the situation so far.
Right. So we're going to go into, this is so I've been watching a lot of this particular website. I won't say website, but channel on YouTube, Law and Crime. They've been covering it day by day, or even hour by hour, as testimony is being brought out, right? So this right here is going to be talking about, reveals 5 ways to prove sex trafficking, right? Because that's because for racketeering, you only have to prove 2 elements of racketeering. So let's go back into, before we go into that, I think it was good, you did bring up, let me actually go into the definition. So racketeering, often associated with racketeer-influenced corrupt organizations, refers to a pattern of criminal activity typically organized aimed at earning profit through illegal means, right? This involves a coordinated effort by multiple individuals to repeatedly commit crimes like fraud, extortion, bribery, and threats. So again, as you read the definition, earning profit through illegal means. No time has the government even said that he was earning money through illegal means at all. They're ultimately saying that he used his power and influence to hold against particular persons, individuals, right? And that's that's the part that is really what I feel is like they overcharging. You know what I mean? And they're going out of the way because he doesn't, even what they're saying that he's done, and they've been able to prove that, yes, he abused Cassidy. Yes, she was involved, he had prostitutes, sleep with her for his pleasure. But does that meet the earning profit through illegal means? Coordinate an effort by multiple individuals to repeatedly commit crimes like fraud, extortion, bribery, and threats? Right? Was he making any money off of this activity? No. So patterns of criminal activity. Racketeering is not a single crime, but a series of illegal acts committed over a period of time. A racketeering activity must be connected to an enterprise, which can be a legitimate business, a criminal organization, or even a government entity. Like I said, Kwame Kilpatrick fell under this because they said he was using the mayor's office like a criminal organization. Racketeering often involves multiple individuals working together to achieve criminal objectives, right? So examples of racketeering: protection rackets. Businesses are forced to pay protection from harm, often threat of violence. Loan sharking. Illegal high interest rates are charged on loans. Drug trafficking. Illegal production, smuggling, and distribution of drugs. Money laundering, cyber extortion, many, many more, right? So we went into that. Going about the origin of the word racketeering. You are completely correct about when it came about, right? The term racketeering was coined by the Employers Association of Chicago in June 1927 in a statement about the influence of organized crime in the Teamsters Union. Specifically, a racket was defined by this coinage as being a service that calls forth its own demand and would not have been needed otherwise. Okay, so yeah, we're going to go into what has to be done to prove sex trafficking. We're going to listen to a little bit of this clip. Let me know if you can hear it.
Charges. He is also facing 2 counts of sex trafficking. And these, by the way, are charges that carry up to life in prison.
Oh, come on, internet.
And a minimum 15 years in prison if he's convicted. So to think about the stakes being any higher, they really aren't. This is what we're talking about. And one of those counts of sex trafficking is a victim 1, Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassandra Ventura. And yes, a lot of this hinges on her testimony. So with 2 weeks of emotional and often explosive testimony behind them, prosecutors have laid out a sweeping narrative of violence and manipulation. But have they proven sex trafficking? That's the question. For example, did Combs knowingly use force, fraud, or coercion to compel Cassandra Ventura into commercial sex acts? So we're going to try to answer that, including what sex trafficking actually means under federal law, what prosecutors have to prove, and how the evidence presented thus far stacks up against one of the most serious allegations that Combs faces. So I think we should first start off with what sex trafficking actually.
I'm sorry for the internet. I don't know.
Actually is. You go to the indictment against Combs, and it alleges, when you're talking about Cassandra Ventura, that from 2009 to 2018, he, quote, knowingly recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, provided, obtained, advertised, maintained, patronized, and solicited by any means a person, knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that means of force, threats of force, fraud, and coercion, and any combination of such means would be used to cause the person to engage in a commercial sex act.
Dude, I don't know what.
And attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused the same. To wit, Combs recruited, enticed, harbored, transported, and maintained victim one, and attempted, aided, and abetted, and willfully caused victim one to engage in commercial sex acts, knowing and in reckless disregard of the fact that victim one.
So let's get into some of the analysis. I apologize for this.
Or is it that the escorts, the alleged male sex workers that were hired, they're being paid? That's what makes it commercial sex.
As long as a thing of value is being exchanged, it can be either one of them. So here, it's the sex worker.
Is it unusual to try somebody like Combs for sex trafficking? Because when I mentioned this, and it was like, I thought sex trafficking is like, you have that shadowy organization that kidnaps young girls from another country, ships them off to, clients, for sex work. That seems to be what people's common definition of sex trafficking is. To charge an individual like him with sex trafficking, is it unusual?
Look, that is what people think about when they think of sex trafficking, but the federal statute is much broader than shadowy organizations, cartels transporting girls across state lines for prostitution. This type of charge, is it unusual? Sure, it's a little unusual, but it fits squarely within the sex trafficking language in the statute.
By the way, not a shocker here, but one of the reasons I love bringing you these stories and talking about all these legal issues is because I love the law. I think
So here's the thing where I feel is quite unusual, is that he brought male escorts across state lines, or it could, they still have to prove that. Most of the time, funny enough, the quote unquote victim was the one that was organizing all of this, paying the money, organizing who was going to come, who was going to participate in it. In my opinion, she should be a co-conspirator and not be a freaking quote unquote a victim. That's just my personal opinion on it. But here's the thing: how is it you're engaging in the act with them, right? You didn't bring somebody over, you know what I'm saying, for the purpose. If you were so I'm the John. Normally, in this case, he's the John. He's not the pimp, right? Where's many of these escorts were part of were part of services, right? That went, they got these people from online, you know what I'm saying? And they, went under, stripper, you know what I'm saying? But they were being provided by a service of anyone that should be charged with the sex trafficking is the organization that, you know what I'm saying, that they went to get the particular male escort. He engaged in it. That's different than, that's a clear difference between being the organization or the person or individual that is providing the sex worker versus you're the one that is partaking in the consumption of the sex worker. That's a big difference. And I believe, you know what I'm saying, I believe their defense is going to, bring this about, right? At least attack that right now. Right now, everything is being pretty much all of the witnesses that are being brought, to give their testimony is coming from the prosecution side. So it's all state evidence right now. The defense will have their time to also bring, their witnesses if there are going to be, and also they have the ability to cross-examine. And a lot of things, if you're following this case, again, I'm not going to get into the minutia of it, but there has been, through cross-examine, right, of the state witnesses, a lot of things are being brought up, that kind of poke holes in the prosecution's story and also in the witnesses' story, right? So with that being said, Stead, you have anything? Because we're going to go to one of the witnesses who was a male, escort or quote unquote stripper that that was hired by Cassie to engage in quote unquote the freak offs for Diddy's pleasure, right? Ultimately, that was being said that Cassie did this under duress, under coercion, under the threat of violence, right? She engaged in these sex acts for the benefit of Sean Combs. But you got something, man, before we go into that?
So I heard this and so I want to ask but didn't she say that she participated because she was afraid he would find another girl, and so basically it was like she didn't want to be replaced or something? I mean, in so many words, she didn't say that part.
She didn't say that. It was that might be inferred. Ultimately, she's saying that she engaged in these acts first and foremost because she wanted to please him, and second and foremost, it was always a threat that he was going to release these tapes. So he had visual evidence. He had tapes of these sex acts, which she willingly recorded. I mean, when she was willingly, you know what I'm saying? She didn't say, "Hey, don't record this." She knew that he had it. And in fact, and the crazy part about it, all of the evidence that has been, from these tapes did not come from Diddy and what they collected from Diddy. Where this came from was from her own devices. So herself. So all of the physical evidence of the visual tape of what she did, on these tapes came from her own stash.
Yeah, she's maintained them all these years. Also, another thing that came out in the trial, has come out in trial and re-examined, and cross-examined, was the fact that, hey, there were times where these tapes, these things got leaked out. These tapes got leaked out or what have you, and people, quote unquote, even from one of the guys who participated in it, as well as a DJ or what have you, let her know that, hey, that they had the tape. Diddy actually paid one of the male escorts $5 million to prevent the tape, the video that he had, right, to get out. So, because it would have damaged his image as well, right? You know what I mean, of what's going on. So he also had a vested interest in not having these tapes come out, right? Now, the only buttress to that, and again, we kind of get into the minutia of the case, is that at one point in time, Cassie alleged that, and her mother testified to this as well, that Diddy, for whatever reason, threatened to release the tape, and that in order for him not to, he required $20,000, which doesn't even make sense. Like, he just paid $5 million to a guy not to release the tape, but somehow he's saying he's going to release the tape to ruin Cassie's career, and so her mother and stepfather actually got a mortgage on their house to pay the $20,000 to Diddy. Now, the defense didn't cross-examine the mother or nothing. They just kind of left that as be. I don't know if it's going to be more to that to come out later on in the trial, but that just seems like, my first inclination was like, why does he need $20,000? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's, that's like all, he paid money to one of her friends. He paid $30,000 to one of the friends that he assaulted. So he assaulted one of her friends, and she ended up getting concussed. And so, and he paid her off, $30,000. Like, all the amounts, like I said, $5 million for this, you know what I mean? Like to the one male escort that actually had proof of the tapes. He recorded something himself, you know what I mean? As protection for himself, allegedly. So, like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. A lot of this stuff doesn't make a lot of sense. Some of the stories and how it's laid out. But that's neither here nor there. The point is that does this raise to a level of where this is, again, racketeering, sex trafficking, right? Arson or what have you.
I'm gonna go ahead and play this. Man, bro, we already an hour in, and I gotta get up for work, so I know we got a lot to cover. So I want to go ahead and just get through some of this. This is one of the male. So this is one of the male escorts that they used. Used them about 12 times or so. He testified or what have you. He was a state witness, so he testified. But I just want you to get what, Piers Morgan ends up asking him a question in regards to, hold on. Yeah, let me see here. Blah, blah, blah. Was Cassie being forced against her will? Because that's ultimately what's going to come down to. Was she a willing participant in this, or was she being forced to do this? At the end of the day, that's one of the major elements of this, right? For it to reach the level of quote unquote sex trafficking, and even then, anyways, let's go into that. I don't know what's going on with my internet. It's just doing this now, dude.
Hey, I've been there, man.
I know, right?
I used to. I'll be on here looking like I had dial up.
I've tried to truthfully.
Oh, his name is the Punisher?
Explain them and recount them the best way that I could. I expressed that I didn't see any violence or aggression or anything that would constitute what his accusations are. And I don't have a strong opinion either way, because I just really didn't hear enough of the facts. So I just look at it as accusations now, based on my.
This fool name is the Punisher, cuz. Right. Oh my God.
I don't know why.
Cassie's husband is going through it right now.
Violence, coercion, and control became a crime of
Let me not do fools.
Trafficking, racketeering, and so on. Are you surprised about the charges that he's facing? Do you think he is capable of what he's being accused of doing?
I am surprised. Me personally, I really did follow the instructions of the prosecution, where they told me to avoid a lot of the details of the case and testimony of other witnesses. So I don't have a strong opinion on his guilt or capability or whatever's going on. I like to remain an unbiased or not have any bias in my perception of the situation. I just think it's extremely sad. My interactions, I've tried to truthfully explain them and recount them the best way that I could. I expressed that I didn't see any violence or aggression or anything that would constitute what his accusations are. And I don't have a strong opinion either way, because I just really didn't hear enough of the facts. So I just.
Bro, that was state witness. Does that, you know what I'm saying? Like really. Now, to be fair, he wasn't the only male escort that's been interviewed. I want to say they interviewed another guy, and he did say that he, witnessed, or not directly, but inadvertently, like he knew that, like he saw Diddy being violent towards Cassie. He took her to a room, and he heard, what would have, even though he didn't physically see it, but only to what somebody would, think of that he was beating on her, right? But it wasn't for the sex act, right? It was for, Diddy's an egomaniac. Cassie didn't do something fast enough for him, and it enraged him, right? He didn't, he asked her to come here. She didn't come fast enough. And then, he threw something at her, and then proceeded to take her to another room and beat her up. Now, that's domestic violence, sounds like to me. It wasn't nothing done during the actual, during the act, or what have you, that he wanted to. And mind you, she did it multiple times. Again, she was very involved in setting all these things up. Most times the male escorts only dealt with her. He wouldn't, he wouldn't deal with any of it. He would actually he covered himself up. He obscured his identity for a long period of time, so they only went through her. But anyways, let's go on to the next clip. Blah 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 blah. I'm just going to just deal with this. Okay, here we go. Diddy's alleged threats, no relevance to sex trafficking charges. So this is our attorney. So
kill Cuddy. Okay, let's bring in our legal expert on all of this, Randy Zellen, former prosecutor, current criminal.
Okay, so before to give a little context or background to this, so another thing that's being another key point and key witness in this case was Kid Cudi, right? He's a rapper, artist, or what have you. At one point in time, Cassie was seeing Kid Cudi and Puffy at the same time, and Puffy became aware of it, or what have you, and there was some sort of situation between the two. Allegedly, a car was bombed of his, like, you know, Molotov cocktail of his. If you want to, you know, go get all the details, you got to go somewhere else. But ultimately, you know, a lot of the legal analysis that, okay, you know, because this car was bombed, or because this car was, you know, it was arson used against this car, then this shows that, you know, this was Diddy's ability to, you know, use threats and violence against people. You know what I'm saying? But the only thing is that Diddy was never charged for this. There was no physical connection to him, and, you know, more than likely did he have somebody do it, but there's no one knows who did it. You know what I mean? And no one knows how the car got bombed. Obviously got bombed. You know what I mean? But there was no direct tie to Puff. You know what I'm saying? In any of it. And when they did the, you know, during the cross-examine, when the defense cross-examined Kid Cudi, they you know, they tried to bring this up, but the prosecution objective. But they at least they got the question out. Irregardless, it's on, you know, it's part of you know, recorded history. But nonetheless, the defense was like, hey, did you know that the DNA profile that came back from, you know, the car after it was examined by the police was a female? So which female did it? You know, was it Cassie? Was it, you know, was it the other girl? Was his assistant, his name Capricorn Clark? You know, like, bro, it's kind of wild. But anyways, so this attorney's going to talk about. So, you know, that's why it says Diddy's alleged threats, no relevance to sex trafficking charges, right? So we're going to go in here and go into this. Come on, man. I lost my place.
Out of Sean Diddy Combs says Combs showed up at her house with a gun.
Yeah, this was testimony that happened today of his long-term, like he had an assistant named Capricorn Clark or what have you.
Prosecution's case, and I don't know if any of those were answered today. We'll get to that at the end. Let me go through some. Good to see you again, Randy.
Thank you.
Some of the specifics on this, on the Suge Knight stuff. Okay, so as a rival, of course, of Diddy, Suge Knight. So this woman, Capricorn Clark, who worked for Diddy for years, says that Diddy threatened to kill her. This is the quote. He told me that he didn't know that I had anything to do with Suge Knight. If anything happened, he would have to kill me because, you know, he apparently took her to Central Park. She had worked for Suge Knight before. He finds out she used to work for him and, you know, allegedly threatens to kill her. Pick up.
Bro, this allegedly happened on her first day on the job. Yeah. Bro, this just sounds so weird to me, bro. Like, what? On the first day of the job? You know what I'm saying? Like, so if that was me, I'd be like, yo, I ain't gonna work for you. You know what I mean? Like, on the first day, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like, come on, bro. Like, a lot of this sound like cap to me, bro. You know what I'm saying? But we'll continue. We'll continue. Oh, well, unless you want to say something.
Well, but see, that's what I'm saying. Like, if this the case, why don't you just stop the job? Like, what are y'all willing to do for jobs, bro? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just stuff I'm not willing to do for jobs. You know,
to me, bro, this sounds like this is some shit that somebody, you know, now after the fact, You know what I mean? Because look, there's no witnesses to this, right? You know what I'm saying? It's a he said, she said. You know what I mean? Like there's no proof that happened.
I'm just saying, let's say we just take it at face value.
Yeah, okay.
Like, is going to work at Macy's that bad, bro?
See, allegedly was only making like $65,000. I'm like, what? That shit ain't, get the hell out of here. But anyways, let's continue.
Up on that if it's significant at all.
Just an eensy-weensy problem here. That apparently took place in 2004.
Yeah, right when he hired her. Yep.
In 2024, which by my math, and I went to summer school for math, is 2 decades later, she's trying to get her job back as the chief of staff. So much for the fear, the intimidation, the threats, the coercion, and all of that nonsense that the government is throwing at this poor jury. Again, what do we see? A monster. He's not charged with being a monster. He's charged with discrete offense conduct.
Right.
He's charged with sex trafficking, running a criminal enterprise, and bringing prostitutes across state line. Whether he wants to kill Suge Knight or the guy who invented the sugar daddy, what's the difference? He's not charged with those crimes.
Let me ask you about how running this criminal enterprise as his business allegedly fit, which would be
By the way, and what was the business and where is the profit? There's been absolutely zero mention that this criminal enterprise, like any other criminal enterprise, was actually used to make money through force or coercion.
Did any of this back and forth about his...
Bro, we talked about this. It's a lawyer, dog. You know what I'm saying? Like, honestly, man, like you gotta just, you just gotta be like, in my opinion, like I said, I ain't for Diddy, bro, but but like we gotta, use the facts and what's, at hand, be objective, just objective thinking. We've already said all of this when we was covering the freaking definition of racketeering. I'm like, where was he making money from illegal profit? Like, you know what I mean? Like, this doesn't make any sense, bro. Like I said, old girl came back 20 years later. You know what I'm saying? A girl from Danity Kane was the same thing, bro. Like it sounds like to me, with a lot of stuff, dealing with, certain genders, it's like a new, like, oh, okay, I'm gonna stick it to you hard now, you know what I mean? It's this recalling of how what thing actually happened. It's like, no, that's not how it happened. You know what I mean? But but you can now, everyone, it's my truth. You know what I'm saying? A woman came up with that. You know what I'm saying? It's my truth. You know what I'm saying? Like, what? But anyways, let's continue.
His threats against Cuddy. So she claims she was kidnapped, by the way.
Makes him jealous.
Because he was jealous.
He's not charged with being jealous.
And Cassie, who was, with Kid Cudi, says, hey, where are you? And she says, she being Capricorn Clark, she's testifying today, she says, Puffy, she called him Puffy. Puffy came out and got me with a gun and brought me into Cuddy's house to kill him. And Sean Combs says, who were you talking to? What phone number is this? So, she was trying to use it. The backstory on that, just real quick, she was using a number,
right,
a fake number for Cassie, and he was trying to figure it out.
And what does any of that have to do with these charges?
Well, that's what I'm asking is, like, is there anything there that he's using his business, he's using his bodyguard and others as some sort of a conspiracy, or that business was being used for criminal purposes?
The problem is the government has decided we're going to, whether they like it or not, they have linked the RICO, the criminal enterprise, to the sex trafficking, to the bringing prostitutes across state lines.
So it has to specifically
that is what, not necessarily, but the jury will have no choice but to look for these links. Kid Cudi, all that proves is that he is a very wealthy, very crazy, very jealous lunatic. It's a bad combination to have a lot of money, a horrific temper, and a lot of money.
Let me ask you this then. Theoretically, that's interesting. You bring up the that it is going to be linked in the jury's minds to the sex trafficking. Does it legally have to be, or could there be this argument that you had this business, you're running this record label, and you use that business, the employees of the business, including this woman, bodyguards and drivers, and like cars that I'm sure are registered to the business, to commit crimes, whether it's breaking into someone's house, kidnapping allegedly this woman? Couldn't that be the underlying crime?
It could be, but the problem is when we talk about RICO, we talk about a criminal enterprise. Again, like it or not, the jury's going to be looking for profit. When we talk about the classic use of RICO, organized crime, crime families, that is their business. That's how they make money, through extortion, through loan sharking, through prostitution, through drug dealing. That's how the enterprise makes money. We have heard zero about any of these acts having to do with Sean P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, whatever his name is, making $1 off of these things.
Right. Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download.
Yeah, bro, and that's, you know what I'm saying, that's gonna be my end of it, dude. You know, covering that, like, really, that's on point, man. Like, dude was so on point when it came to that, man. Like it just doesn't make sense, dude. Like, it's just an over. This is, and I hope the government lose. I really do. I hope they lose. That's the only way they have, a high profile case like this, and they have egg on their face. That's the only way they'll ever, stop this and think twice about doing this, bro. And misusing this law. You know what I'm saying? Like it's, to me, is a very gross injustice in them doing that. Now, again, is Diddy a terrible person? Yeah, we all knew he was a terrible person, and it's just further, brought that out. You know what I'm saying? Did he do crimes? Yes, but you could commit kidnapping, you could commit extortion, and not be, as an individual, and not be a racket. You know what I mean? like you could commit all those crimes. You could commit murders,
assault, domestic violence. Like, these are all already crimes. So to have to fabricate these, ridiculous charges, like I said, in my mind, that means you don't have enough evidence for these charges individually to be successful. At least the prosecution doesn't. So you kind of have to do something with the lady that female lawyer kind of admitted the government has this overbroad definition of what, they determine as sex trafficking. Right? Because, even when you heard her talking, I'm thinking like, man, if a man takes his wife out of the state and has sex with her, and maybe they get into an argument or going through a divorce, she could say he was sex trafficking her then. You know what I'm saying? Like, if the definition is so broad,
right,
that you can charge a person who is engaged on the business side of prostitution, meaning they're a paying customer, and not the pimp or the, as far as escort, not the I guess you call it like the leasing agent agency, but you could charge them with sex trafficking. Well, why couldn't you charge a spouse?
Or, in fact, it was so funny. Like, I don't know if there's Chopper from Making the Band, right? You know what I'm saying? He was being interviewed by Art of Discussion. I forgot the name of the group. The Art of Dialogue podcast. And he got hemmed up, you know what I'm saying? With sex trafficking. Mind you, it was about allegedly a girl, a prostitute, you know what I'm saying? A girl that was a prostitute, you know what I'm saying, coming to see him, you know what I mean? And which never happened, you know what I'm saying? And he got freaking sex. That was considered sex trafficking. Like, if we're going to make, like, if you fly a chick out, you know what I'm saying, for the express purpose of having sex, that could fit that definition. You know what I mean? Like, which is wild to me, especially now, especially how we have in this society where they try to say, hey, sex work is, you shouldn't have any shame for having sex work, and that's a valuable thing for women to do. You know what I mean? And we're not supposed to put any shame on it or anything like that. But you're saying, but if you engage, what's OnlyFans? You know what I mean? That's over state lines. That's interstate commerce. You know what I mean? For the purposes of engaging in sexual activity. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, dude, it's just baffling, man. You know, like the world we live in, dude. That's why a lot of people are checking out. You know what I'm saying? As a whole with this country. That's why that's how you get the Trumps of the world. You know, to be honest with you, bro. You know what I'm saying? That's how they come in power. You know what I mean? Because the center left, you know what I'm saying? This quote unquote, cultural, that's all they really are. They're not really left as far as true politics, but the cultural left, you know what I'm saying? With these, it's okay to have slut walks and women can have their own agency and sell their body, and we shouldn't have to say nothing about it. But then at the same time, they're a victim if somebody engages, in the act. What with them, which we said that we shouldn't, judge people about, right? So it's like you can't have it both ways. Which one is it? You know what I mean? But yeah, bro. I mean, I'm about to end off on that note in regards to P. Diddy to this, man. Unless you got something else to say in regards to that. I want to briefly. We're already over the 10 o'clock mark. I want to kind of go into the P. Diddy's, Tory Lanez things next. But yeah, obviously you want to give your thoughts about this particular issue.
Well, I keep it brief, but like even what you were saying, there's such a contradiction now where you see women who complain about there being age gaps in relationships between males and females, and she's an adult, but she's too young to make the adequate decision or whatever, even if she's completely of age, even over the legal age. But you, like you said, you have this kind of double standard or this like incongruence between, or like a cognitive dissonance between, like you want me to believe she has the agency to engage in sex work, but not the agency to engage in a consensual relationship with someone who just has an age gap.
Right.
And so it's as you said, and what I was trying to point out, if the law concerning sex trafficking is so broad that it can be portrayed in this way, I know the example you said is, what if you fly a chick out, but what if you fly to them even? If the conditions are, let's just say you've seen videos like that where a guy flies a chick out or a chick flies somewhere and it just, the energy's not there, the vibe isn't right, and maybe they're both dissatisfied. If one of the party members should want to pursue charges out of spite or something, what's to say that they can't, based on the outcome of this case and the effect it could have on sex trafficking law?
Yeah, like I was telling you, that happened to Chopper from Making a Band. That's exactly what happened to him. He was dealing with these women. Or whatever. One of the chicks he didn't, he wasn't vibing with. You know what I'm saying? And they set him up. They had this one chick that was a known, prostitute or what have you. That's what they did. I wouldn't say all of them were, but he was messing around with, some loose women or what have you. And because, he kind of like, flaked them, you know what I'm saying? They created this whole charge on him talking about, he was sex trafficking and he's a pimp and, you know what I mean? And all of this. And you know what I'm saying? He had a charge and it was eventually thrown out of court, but he had to go through that. So he was, in his interview on Art, check it out if you can, Art of Dialogue, freaking, he was like, hey, I don't like Puffy, you know what I'm saying, for what he did to him and his other bandmates in that group, you know what I mean? But he was like, what's real is what's real, you know what I'm saying? Like what's true is what's true, You know, it's not a defense on him, but it's at the end of the day, it's like, you know, we let these type of things keep on happening, bro. You know, and without any type of pushback, you know, it's just going to just get more egregious and more egregious and more egregious over time. You know, anybody can, you know what I'm saying? Listen, if they're able to do it to an ex-president, bro, they can do it to anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what it comes down to. Yeah. So anyway, so the next part of the evidence, the next thing that we're gonna go into is also, you know, this particular story about Tory Lanez. You know, again, the whole, you know, and the common thing about all of this is this idea again that women are, you know, again, they have agency, so on and so forth. You know, the whole believe all women or whatever. But even against when the facts and the evidence are pointing completely opposite of that, but yet we still have to, you know what I'm saying? Society is telling us, well, you know, turn a blind eye to the objective truth. You know, you just got to stick to this. You know what I'm saying? You know, if a woman says it, it'll happen. You know what I mean? Irregardless of nothing points to that. And it's a sculptory evidence showing to the otherwise, you know, no, that can't be true. She would have never did that. She'll, you know, why would she do that? You know, we just have to trust what she says, blah, blah, blah. So let's go into the whole thing with Tory Lanez and Meg Thee Stallion. So I'm just going to start off. A lot of us know that, you know, Tory Lanez was convicted for allegedly shooting. Well, I guess you can't say allegedly when you get convicted, but he was convicted for shooting Meg Thee Stallion in the foot. And it was, so we're just going to go into, I'm just going to cover, you know, some of the timeline of that. So I'm going to start off when he got charged, right? So he was charged on October 8th. The Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office charges Lanez with felony assault with a semi-automatic firearm. On July 12th, the defendant and the 24-year-old victim got into an argument while riding the SUV in the Hollywood Hills. Prosecutors said in news release the victim exited the vehicle, and Peterson is accused of shooting several times at her feet and wounding her. So his name is Daystar Peterson. Obviously, Tory Lanez is you know, his stage name or whatever, but his real name is Daystar Peterson. So you'll see, you know, in this article they may go, you know, use interchangeably his real name and the stage name. Lanez is also charged with carrying a loaded and unregistered firearm in the vehicle, as well as a gun allegation that he personally inflicted great bodily injury, according to the release. All right. Judge puts a protective order against Lanez. I'm only going to cover the major thing. You know, there's a bunch of stuff that happens. You know, she releases an album. So here we go. December 14, 2021, during testimony at preliminary hearing, Los Angeles Police Department Detective Ryan Stogner revealed more details of the allegation assault. Lanez allegedly yelled "Dance B" as he fired at Meg Thee Stallion, who he described as being half in and half out of the car. Megan immediately fell to her feet, observed blood, fell to the ground, and then crawled into an adjacent driveway of a residence. She described her injuries as bleeding profusely. A social media post falsely claims that a pretrial hearing revealed that Lanez's DNA was nowhere to be found on the gun. Now, that's not misinformation. But anyways, this misinformation gains traction. Lane he releases that. So he performs at Coachella. Stallion appears on CBS Morning in her first televised interview directly addressing the shooting. He said he is standing up over the window shooting, and I don't even want to move. I don't want to move too quick. She said, I don't know if he's going to shoot something like something that's like super important. I don't know if he could shoot me or kill me. Stallion drops an album, blah, blah, blah. Singer, August Alsina claims that Lanez assaulted him. This and that. He's placed on house arrest because he was out on bond when he allegedly attacked August Alsina. Jury selection begins on December 22nd. So here it says the trial officially begins with an opening statement from both Los Angeles County prosecutors, Kathy Todd and Alexander Boat, as well as defense attorney Greg I don't even know how to pronounce that last name. The prosecution set out to prove that the shooting was motivated by Lanez being spurned by comments about his rap career. On the other hand, the defense argues that the case was based on jealousy, saying his client was definitely not the shooter and asserted that nobody heard anyone say Dance B. 3 officials who responded to the crime scene and two who made the arrest testified along with the detective. Through evidence and officials' respective testimonies, it established that there was a gunshot residue found on both Peterson and Kelsey Harris, right? So that's something. Stallion takes the stand as a witness for her protection for prosecution and testified in detail about the night. Stallion also said she suffered from suicidal thoughts. So she recounts the record that Lance tried to instigate a fight between herself and Kelsey Harris, her former assistant. I don't feel like I want to be on this earth, she testifies. Okay, yeah. Stallion said that she and Lanez had an intimate but not exclusive relationship before the night of the shooting. I don't think she. I don't remember this being okay. Was that testimony or she's saying that this came out later? She did not testify to that. I know this came out later because when she was asked on Gayle King, she denied having sex with him, right? And while taking a stand, Harris testified that she did not see. So this is Kelsey. Kelsey Harris is the friend, right? So while taking a stand, Harris testified that she did not see Lane shoot Stallion and did not hear him say Dance B. The testimony is a major blowback for the prosecution because Harris previously told authorities that Lance had also threatened her. And recanting her story, Lance further casted doubt about that Lance attacked Stallion. The prosecution, which granted Harris immunity. Now, why would you need immunity as a witness? Worked to convince jurors that the original testimony is the correct one, not the one that she actually gave in court. They asked her about whether Lanez had made bribes, sharing text messages between Harris and Stallion, and having Harris confirm that she herself did not shoot Stallion. Dr. Lee Hureno, the surgeon who operated on Stallion in the same month as the attack, not the one at the hospital when she went to the hospital. So this is a totally different doctor. He provided testimony that Stallion was indeed shot. He showed x-rays that confirmed they are still foreign metallic bodies in her feet. After the continued hesitancy of Kelsey Harris during her in-court testimony, and defense attorney insinuated that Harris had been coerced by the district attorney's office, the DDA's moved to have Harris's entire September 2022 interview admitted into evidence. In her 80-minute interview that was played in court for the jury and the public, Harris sounded more relaxed and sure of her recollection of the night, saying that Tory Lanez did attack both her and Megan. So they took an earlier testimony because the one in court, she basically said she was saying that she didn't see him shoot her, nor did he say the Dance B. So her testimony in court was contradictory to what Meg Thee Stallion said, and it also contradicts her original testimony. Right? Later in the day, 2 DNA experts, one from the defense and one from the prosecution, testified that Lane's DNA was not found on the magazine of the gun found on the scene, but came back inconclusive for being found on the firearm itself. Okay, we'll jump that. That's not important. Blah blah blah. The defense called Sean Kelly, a 911 caller who witnessed a portion of the assault from his bedroom window. During his testimony, Kelly waffled back and forth about the sequence of events he witnessed, saying, "I never saw a gun," and that both Tory and Kelsey were near the muzzle flash. After the jury deliberated for 2 days, Tory Lanez is convicted on all 3 felony charges: assault with a semi-automatic firearm, possession of a concealed unregistered firearm, negligent discharge of a firearm. He was taken into custody as soon as the verdict was read. So that's like the official, like what happened during court, because this a lot of talk of what happened in court, and he didn't testify. Which you have a right, you don't have to testify or what have you. But later, there's been calls for him because he got assaulted. He was stabbed like 14 times in prison. Now, Kelsey Harris, her bodyguard, who was not under an NDA, stated that he overheard her, Kelsey Harris, the other girl in question, that she was a shooter, right? And so he's made a sworn affidavit to this. And so this evidence, has been, he did this back in October of last year. He claimed that, his conscience, he couldn't allow, him to be still in prison or what have you. That he being Tory Lanez or Daystar Peterson to stay in prison knowing what he knew. So he has, so now after the stabbing, right, which was just recent, that would just happen, this month, there's calls from, his legal team and other politicians to say, hey, look, let's get this guy a pardon because, his life is under threat. Obviously his team was trying to get, him a new trial or whatever the case may be. But now since the attempt on his life is like, listen, there's evidence to, show that was contrary to what happened in the actual original court case that proves his innocence. And, they're trying to get him, get the governor to pardon him so he can get out of jail since, it appears like, that it was a hit, because this knowledge of this evidence with the bodyguard statement has been floating around for a while, right? At least for a few months, at least since last year, October of last year, when he made the official statement. So this is his father, and then the politician from Florida going to be talking about some of the things that have come out since the case has occurred. Did you want to say anything, bro, or before I play this?
No, you can go ahead.
All right, cool.
Sir. Right now, my son is recovering, and we're thankful for that. We thank God for that. This was a very brutal, unprovoked situation, and I know that many people like to speculate a lot of things, and when we don't have facts on the internet, people sort of provide their own, and some people, I guess, are well-meaning, but there's just a lot of misinformation that goes out. However, I'm thankful that he is recovering very well at this time, and so we're grateful. We're very thankful for his recovery. Not for the grace of God, my son could have been out of here. So we are very, very thankful right now.
The person who attacked him is, I believe, serving.
I don't have a window to that.
Trying to fast forward because he got asked about that, but he does cover it
by health experts, including Casey Flash hits. Have you spoken to your son since? I presume you have, since he was attacked.
Oh man, let's get into it.
Job you've done getting in, out over the last little while, over the last couple of days on your, on your platform so that people can know exactly what happened. But let me tell you from a parental standpoint, a parental observer of my son walking through this. I'll never forget the day when we're sitting outside of the courtroom getting ready for court to reconvene. And imagine the only independent witness, which should have been the only objective witness in this case, was a gentleman by the name of Sean Kelly. Interestingly enough, the only person that would be able to have an unbiased viewpoint of what actually happened. Imagine that the prosecution did not want to call that witness. Why? This is the only independent witness, but yet you don't want to call this person because obviously his bird's eye view will not support what you want the narrative to be. And so when we sat outside, my wife and I, we saw this gentleman come in and we sat down, and it was identified for us that, oh, this is Mr. Sean Kelly. He's sitting across from us on the other side of the hallway. And as we sat there, the prosecution came out, one of their detectives or investigators rather, and one of the prosecutors, they took this gentleman, they went upstairs, I believe it was to the 14th floor at that time. By the time this man came down, the witness they did not want to call, this man came down and his testimony became so embellished with other nonsense that people who saw it just looked at it and said, this is crazy. So I saw these kind of things going on all throughout this case. People trying to bury evidence, not trying, burying evidence, a judge that refused to allow certain things to come into the courtroom or to be said, and was totally biased on the part of the prosecution. So the whole thing just stunk of a setup.
Just one last question, because you made me think of this. But if your son was not responsible for Megan Thee Stallion being shot, we do know that indisputably she was shot. Who shot her?
First of all, the whole idea of her being shot is a speculation. That's a speculation. It's to this point has not been proven that she was even shot. And I want to make it really clear because I'm asked questions a lot as it regards to Megan. Megan is a young woman. I'm a father.
Okay.
I don't have any
Oh, man.
does not even show up at court, but some picture of a weapon that resembles or is the type of weapon they say that was used. The weapon does not show up at court. There is absolutely no, we hear this point of 0.1% of his DNA on the gun. Do you know what that actually means when you investigate it? That over 1.5 billion black people on the planet could have been their DNA. Yet my son is convicted for having used this gun, where an expert witness from the LAPD gets in there and he testifies as an expert of how many pounds of pressure it takes to shoot this gun and to shoot it 1, 2, 3 times and on and on and on. Yet the only evidence you have could fit the profile of 1.5 billion black people on planet Earth. The whole thing stinks of a conspiracy and it stinks of a cover-up.
Okay, let me turn to Representative Luna. You've taken up this case and you've done it at a time when Drake has shared a petition to have Tory Lanez released. Chris Brown posted Free Tory on his
to Gayle King. First of all,
Okay. Now, remember when we talked about and we read the testimony of what she said, how it occurred, right? That she claimed that she testified. She says, Steyer said she suffered from suicidal thoughts. I don't feel like I want to be on this earth. Wait up. She claimed that. He said, yeah. There it goes. He said the trial officially begins, right? She's blah, blah, blah. The prosecutor sets out to prove. On the other hand, the defense argues, okay, wait up. 3 officers who also responded to the crime scene made the arrest, testified along with the detective. Stallions takes a stand as a witness for the prosecution and testifies in detail about the night of the shooting. She recounts on the record that Lanez tried to instigate a fight, and her former assistant Stallion also testifies she saw Lanez shoot at her. She saw. Okay, I want you to watch this real quick.
This is a version of events from Megan Thee Stallion herself, from her own documentary about what she says happened.
we left to go home. I was in the car with Tori and his driver and Kelsey. We are all arguing. I don't remember exactly what I was saying, but I knew I was talking shit, and he probably was a little offended. I tried to get out the car one time. I'm over this shit. They was like, Megan, get back in the car, get back in the car. We almost to your house. I get out the car again. I ain't even got shit on. I just got on a swimsuit. And I'm walking off, and this motherfucker just started hollering at me. He was like, dance, bitch.
It's a very dramatic sort of.
So my thing is, were you walking off and he shot you up from behind? Why would you, you know what I'm saying? like I don't know, bro. Oh, let's keep going.
Recounting there in animated form of what happened. She then talked about it again in an interview with Gayle King on CBS, the morning show there in 2022. Let's take a look at this.
So I get out the car and it's like everything happens so fast. And all I hear is this man screaming, he said, dance, and he started shooting. And I'm just like, oh my God. Like he shot a couple of times. Mm-hmm. And I was so scared. In the car? I didn't even want to move. I didn't want to move too quick. Like, cause I'm like, oh my God, if I take the wrong step, I don't know if he can shoot something that's like super important. I don't know if he could shoot me and kill me. Like,
the final clip I want to play, this is where in her own documentary, again, she talks about that interview and admits she may not have been entirely truthful. Let's take a look at this.
Yes, bitch, I lied to Gayle King, bitch. First of all, I didn't know that bitch was even gonna ask me about that shit. Bitch, she's always want to talk about this shooting. Why'd you ask me about fucking Tori? That's not what this is about. Even if I was, I fucked once, maybe twice on a drunk night. Bitch, you kept catching me out of my fucking mind.
No, I don't think you need to be a conspiracy theorist, Representative Luna, to see there's a lot of...
Always never taking accountability, right? She maybe once or twice when she was drunk. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, have you seen the cops in these stories? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, they drunk. You know, I'm the victim. You know, I was drunk. I don't know what I was doing. You know, like it's always that, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, why can't it be like, yeah, hey, look, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, you did it. You did. You know what I mean? Like, whatever, man. But let me get. I'm sorry, bro. They're going to talk about something else. I'm sorry. I guess I thought it was at another point, but she's going to cover like the actual evidence. You know what I'm saying? Like how these quote unquote bullet fragments that were taken from her never appeared.
Inconsistency going on here. You know, she denied to Gayle King that there was any relationship with Tori. She then admits that there had been, that she lied. She doesn't admit to lying about the circumstances of the shooting, but certainly this goes to the heart of her veracity. Why have you taken up this case?
Well, first of all, Piers, thank you so much for having us on to discuss this. And I just want to applaud you and your outlet for actually being able to showcase some of the facts here. Look, I don't have any connections to the rap industry, Mr. West, Mr. Brown. The only people that I really know involved in this are Miss Amber Rose, who actually initially flagged this for me and connected me with Tori's attorney. And when I looked at the evidence, and remember, I'm a member of House Oversight and Accountability, and I actually am the chairwoman of a task force that conducts investigations, most notably into the assassination of John F. Kennedy. So I'm all about the facts. And what I can tell you is that the evidence in this case overwhelmingly speaks to the fact that Mr. Lanez is actually being incarcerated, I would say, as an innocent man. And what I can tell you is, you know, even to your question on what happened with who indeed may have pulled the trigger and, you know, allegedly shot Megan Thee Stallion. Look, I don't know Miss Stallion, but what I can tell you is that the evidence says that there are no bullet fragments and that there are x-rays that the legal team, Mr. Lane's team, actually has that we'll be presenting. What I can also tell you is based on the evidence that I've seen, you know, again, that number 0.01% DNA match, alleging that it's Mr. Lane's, when in actuality, you know, they actually did not choose to test the other 4 individuals. There are no fingerprints found on the magazine. By any arguable case, if this was a murder trial, he would actually be acquitted because there is no evidence. And so what I will tell you is, one of the things that people ask is, well, why are you getting involved as a federal representative when this is a California state? He's not from, Florida here, or he's not represented by a Florida member of Congress. What purview do you have? And what I will say, Pierce, is that I have a platform and I have the ability on a federal level to impact prison reform. And what I can tell you is everything in this case, I don't believe that he was actually given due process. I believe it was a stacked trial. I believe the evidence speaks for itself. And I am willing to actually cross party lines to work with the Democrats to secure pardon from Governor Newsom's office. And we're currently in the process of setting up talks with Governor Newsom. I do think that he is going to do the right thing. I think that the evidence speaks for itself. I don't know. I didn't know that Drake had posted that petition, but what I will tell you is that was the right thing for him to do. And I hope more women specifically in the rap community can come forward and speak to this truth.
Yeah, right. But yeah, man, what your thoughts, bro?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I heard when she was saying, like, there was no residue on him and there was no DNA testing, and her friend was given immunity. Mm-hmm. And there was actually potential that she was the one who fired the shot because
it was
an
her
argument. That's what I heard. I haven't really been following this story super closely.
Right.
But that's what I heard. And then, I did see that clip where she said she lied to Gayle King and all this other stuff. But like you said, we do have this kind of weird situation where on the one hand, women want to present themselves as having agency and capability, and, Kamala Harris should have been president and was just as capable of being president as Joe Biden or any of the other men who have been president, or Hillary Clinton or whatever should have been president. But simultaneously, we always have an excuse for why they engage in degenerate or illegal behavior that, if a man is also guilty of engaging in, the man is fully guilty of, without any excuse, without any qualifier, without any justification or equivocation. And so, like, even when Rep Luna was talking about, we need women in the rap community it's like, even Rep Luna's not exempt from this, because they brought it to a vote. I don't know how it went, but she wanted to have a rule passed where members of Congress could, if they were new parents, they could have like 12 weeks or 6 weeks, might be 12 weeks of like parental leave. And they would be able to either vote through a proxy or something, because she was saying, like, she just had a kid and it's hard for mothers, and that really limits the amount of women who could be who could serve in Congress. But there are specific rules about how much time you have to actually be present and how you have to vote. Right. And so that's one of the pushbacks that, the Republicans have had. And so she's gotten a lot of pushback from her own party. But, like, there are limitations to everything we do in life. You know what I'm saying? And so you could say whatever you want to say about whatever the procedure should be, but when women in the private sector get pregnant and have children, they are faced with the reality of either having to go back to work and put their children in daycare and not being accommodated, or they have to quit their jobs, whichever one is the most feasible.
Right.
And so, it's a hollow, it's a hollow projection or a hollow representation when you see these types of people politicians and celebrities who have these empty gestures, these hollow gestures like this, and they, I'm doing this to try to shine a light on, or trying to empower, or they use this kind of language. When the reality is that for the people on the ground, by and large, nothing changes.
Right.
You are able to create, maintain, or legislate special carve-outs for you and your coworkers and your class. But for the majority of working people, working class people, working, women, what you are doing will have no effect on them. And so my sentiment mostly is you should have to suffer under the same constraints as everybody else.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? When I'm injured, I got to go to work. I just got to go to work. I just got to deal with it. I got to just figure it out. I don't get to, serve, 6 terms in the House and 2 terms in the Senate and get a pension for life. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't happen. I don't get cost of living increases on my salary, and I don't get to set the terms for my pay increases, and
right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So like, you already get enough.
Right.
And so, I mean, it's great that in this one instance, she's sticking up for individuals who are being unjustly and unfairly treated by the law, even if he's guilty, as we talked about with the Diddy situation, right? Even if he's guilty, then let him be guilty on the merits. Right. Don't be guilty because you appear to have or either did manipulate, the facts.
Right.
But yeah, I'll cut it short just so we don't extend it even longer. I know we've been on here kind of hitting things kind of long.
Yeah, man. I just, we'll just go ahead and move on to the last thing. We already at 2 hours, bro. So, and I'm definitely, but yeah, it just goes to show, man, that we're just the most expendable demographic out there, man.
Yeah.
Honestly, when this first happened, she claimed that it was on glass. She stepped on glass, and then allegedly, she changed her story up and saying she was trying to protect Tory and so on and so forth. What from what I heard ultimately ended up happening was that, from my understanding, Tory was sleeping with both, was sleeping or was engaged in with both Kelsey and Megan, right? And that came out in that ride or what have you, and it was Kelsey getting into the fight with Megan over this, right? You know what I'm saying? And it was it was Kelsey that attempted to shoot the weapon, you know what I mean? And then Tory, to prevent her from, because she shot 3 times in the air, and then and so he grabbed the gun from her. From the story goes, he grabbed the gun from her. So he snapped her arm, like, you know what I'm saying, he grabbed her by the arm. That caused for her hand to jerk, the weapon fall down, shoots again, another 2 shots, boom, boom, and so that's that. And there's also there's other clips as well. There's a ring of footage of the 3 shots and the 2 shots, right? You know what I'm saying? That backs up that testimony or what have you. That's also what the bodyguard I want to say testified to as well in his statement. So yeah, that's how he could get the gun residue, but not actually physically ever touch the weapon. And from my understanding, it was her pistol. It was like a pink pistol. You know what I'm saying? It was it was obviously hers. It wasn't his. You know what I'm saying? What guy goes around carrying a pink weapon? You know what I mean? So like, yeah.
Even if you're Canadian.
Right, even if you're Canadian, and ultimately, at the end of the day, that's why she got immunity. And it basically came down to two friends that, you know what I'm saying, came together to, you know what I'm saying, to get their story straight. And Tory, ultimately he didn't take the stand, which I mean, he's trying to keep to his street cred, which I don't understand, bro. Like, that doesn't make any sense. If I'm going up the road for any particular thing, you know what I mean? No, I'm gonna tell exactly how it is and how it went down, But this has all come out in other interviews that I watched, not this one, mainly gossip interviews, right? Like the Joe Budden podcast and this other gay guy, I can't remember his name. Which made me think, like, so why? Because I'm like, Tory, you be talking to this dude? But allegedly this is what I'm saying, it came out. I forgot the guy's name. He was he's been on a bunch. He's been on Love and Hip Hop, and he recently just had recently went viral for an interview of somebody. I don't know if it was old girl from ESPN. I want to say it's old girl from ESPN, because she said some crazy stuff, but I don't know. Screw up. Oh no, yeah. No, it wasn't. It was him. Yeah, it was him and somebody else, and it wasn't old girl from ESPN, but he had stated something about, like, because he was asking, can women be men or something like that, or can a woman be a man, and he agreed that they could, and that most women don't. You got to check it out, dude. I'm gonna find it for you. But anyways, it's the same guy. He claimed that a lot of women don't look good. They're not being a woman well enough. Like, there's, like, transgender guys are can be better looking women, or they are better dressed, or better showcase themselves than actually regular women. It blew up on the internet for a couple of days. So dude, this is just a trip, man. It's these days, man. It's he quote unquote was saying, why he remained silent, because he didn't think that they had enough evidence to convict him, and he didn't want to tell on Kelsey, right? And he didn't want to, and obviously, Megan, he quote unquote was. Allegedly, what he did, you tried to save two black women, versus just one, right? And that's why.
And they burned them. Wow, what a shocker!
Right, that's the wild thing, right? And so, with that being said, man, let's move on to the last subject real quick. We'll cover this, George. So I realized the other day, man, it's been 5 years since George Floyd, and Fox 9, which is the Fox affiliate in Minneapolis, did a documentary, a documentary about it. Where is, after Floyd, like, what's happened in Minneapolis or whatever since then. I just want to cover a little bit of it. So the point where this, to get some context with this video, this is the start of, at this point in the video, they're talking about, what state investigations, consent decrees that, Minneapolis had to go under federally. They were investigated by the state, you know what I'm saying? How they do policing, things of that nature. And we're going to be covering that, and then we'll be wrapping up.
Black community members or their vehicles. They're more likely to cite Black community members, use force against Black community members, and arrest Black community members during a traffic stop.
Race was the likely reason for the vast disparity in outcomes.
This is a court enforceable agreement. This is not something that's just, based on a promise, right? So this has to happen.
We needed to change the policies and the training.
There's a lot to go through within this document. You talk about, specifically, I think the big one is policy.
We're still using the same use of force policy that we were using 5 years ago. That is very frustrating to me.
So in the progress reports, and when you specifically look under policy, you'll see that a lot of officers are frustrated by the length of this policy manual. And officers, in their words, say that this is cumbersome. They don't have time to look through every single page of this document when it comes to what they should do. You know.
All right. So with that, I'm gonna just keep note of that, right? So they don't have time, right? They found that, you know, hey, they were profiling based on race. So this is the part that I really want to get to.
If you're out there and you're an officer and you need to figure out if you're making the right decision.
That's the part that I really want to get to. Right. I think it's right here. Please let this be it. Maybe not. It was right at the end. Oh, here we go. It's here. I think it is here.
Well, for the city, it means
the motion to postpone to December 11th the consideration of the George Floyd Square pedestrian mall.
But for some of the people who live and work near George Floyd Square,
this is our livelihood. This is our community. This is how we feed our kids. And so when you have a couple council members playing around with our lives and our community, it means something to us.
Yet another delay means disappointment.
All of the imagery that you see on this piece is there to symbolize an accident.
And then you have the names that go around it. You also have some of the people holding their fists up.
Breonna Taylor, Philando Castile, Freddie Gray, a symbol of hurt passed on to this community. Unwanted, but never unwilling to continue the fight, not just for justice here, but for justice everywhere.
You see all those names, that gets to you in an emotional way. We've been seeing just how many people have been driving past here. How does it make you feel just to know how many eyes are on your piece that you created?
Every time someone drives by, you know, they're reminded of what happened here. You know, they see George Floyd's name and they remember it. And I think that's part of the, you know, part of the point of having all these artists create all this artwork is that we cannot forget what happened here.
And when you feel you have nowhere else to turn,
we live in a world where we have to live in fear.
Sometimes art.
When we feel like we need to be
much louder than words.
But just walking around George Floyd's,
man,
looking at, you know, there's flowers out there, there are teddy bears, there are these photo of George Floyd specifically that it says something about being a dad. And I think those kind of things just, why it was so shocking to me, it just seems like it was something that happened yesterday.
I apologize for the internet. I don't know, you know.
When you look at what's there.
So here, this was it, right? The Pew Research Center has been tracking public sentiment about the police and racists.
And although it's frustrating because you wish you could speed up the process, but do you though? That's the thing, is you want to make sure that people are ready. You want to make sure people are trained. You want to make sure that people are in the right mindset. So when you get to the end of this, you are able to say that we are ready to go and that we will not experience what happened on May 25th of 2020.
So 5 years later, 72% say the increased focus on race and racial inequality after Floyd's killing did not lead to change.
Being an officer in Minneapolis today is very unique. Most notably, it's a chance to make a real difference in a police department, in a city, and in a community that will define the future of policing in our country. I truly believe Minneapolis will be the greatest law enforcement comeback story in America.
More than half of U.S. adults say things are about the same as before Floyd. A third say things are not worse.
And I'm
only
a believer
11%
that
say
5,
they're
10,
better.
20 years down the road, we can look back at this time frame and recognize that this was the moment where we finally did things differently in a way that truly transformed how we operate at the city. And hopefully we can be an example for others to follow as well.
I'm missing it. But anyways, we ain't got time. Ultimately, where I wanted to get to was that freaking the only 5 years into this consent decree, right? the Minneapolis, the MPD was asking to get out of it. All right. They asking to get out of it. And, you know, since the Justice Department is now Trump's, you know what I'm saying? More than likely, that's going to be the case. Like, but I think they said that they hadn't even meet, you know, damn, I want it. Yeah, here it is. Here it is.
Lean in and to make sure that, you know what, we own this.
Here we go. So, can I explain this? So while the city and MPD still have more work to do to meet the 1 year goals, they haven't even met the 1 year goals, bro. This is, you know what I'm saying? The overall assessment is that the MPD and the city are making steady, distributable progress toward establishing the foundation essential to sustaining compliance with the agreement. This is the independent evaluation of the MPD by effective law enforcement for all. So they haven't even made the 1 year goals, bro. You know what I'm saying? 5 years in, they still haven't even made 1 year goals. But then,
and let's remember that human beings are a part of these systems.
And they're human beings too.
Police officers here, especially 5 years later, by and large, do not feel like their humanity has ever been acknowledged.
I remember one of my command officers.
Their humanity. That's the chief of the police of MPD. I think this guy, he's supposed, because I don't know if he's a chief police or whatever, too. Because isn't it like, they say they the twin cities, right? I don't know. Like, is it another city?
Minneapolis and St. Paul.
And St. Paul, yeah. I think he might be the police chief of the St. Paul. Bro, that's the part that kind of tripped me out when I was watching this, man. Unfortunately, I think they're gonna say it here. Like,
one saw that video, and everyone knew what they saw.
One chief was not, but he's here to pick up the pieces of what happened.
It does go way too far to try and suggest that our eyes were lying to us.
Here it is.
As we try to make those changes, let's not break things that are.
That consent decree gets introduced.
Anyways, the point being, they trying to get out of it. They didn't even make the freaking and just unfortunately I just can't click on it right like that. But ultimately, you know, 5 years later, they talking about the, you know, hey, they didn't even make the first year goals, but you know what? Job well done. That to me was
that even shows that during the Biden administration they hadn't made any improvement. So that even says that, you know, for the Biden administration, this was all talking points. This wasn't anything that had meaningfully invested any interest in working to make sure improvements were being made. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, bro. It's again just we're cannon fodder, bro. We're cannon fodder, man. That's where I come. That's where I come away from it with. You know what I'm saying? Is that, you know, okay, we'll put a memorial up. You know, makeshift one. You know what I mean? You could be, you know, you could be a bunch of you know, like it's, you know, we all know that's where all these DEI stuff kind of happened after 2020, and you know, all of the, you know, corporate support that came into BLM and other, you know, quote unquote, you know, investments by JP Morgan and Chase, and they are all backing away from that now. You know what I'm saying? they all have, you know, Kmart, I'm sorry, it wasn't Kmart, but Walmart and all these corporate, you know, they made all these pledges during this time. Yeah, Target, they all have ran back from that. All of them, for the most part. You know what I'm saying? And hey, you know, even got, you know, even the independent evaluator and the, you know, the Justice Department is like, yeah, we're You know what I'm saying? Y'all did enough. Y'all did enough until the next, you know what I'm saying, major crisis or what have you, man. It's just sickening, dude. At the end of the day. So yeah, it's not no really positive note to come out of all of this, but I just wanted to expose it and show the thorough line of how all of this kind of all wraps up, man. You know what I'm saying? We definitely have a target on our back in this country as a black male. I mean, and not to discount, our freedom, our freedmen, women, you know what I'm saying? But it's not as intense and it's not as focused and it's not as diabolical as it is towards us. You know what I'm saying? And even so much so that, a lot of times our women are engaged as tools against us for that very same purpose. And it's just really sad at the end of the day. I really feel like unless we get reparations, this always comes down, because that's our whole focus. Unless we get reparations to where we can materially change our position in this country, I don't really see any real hope outside of that, because it's definitely not the political processes. You know what I'm saying? We too much of us are stuck on stupid when it comes to these two political parties. We just had a black Democratic governor, veto a reparations bill in freaking what was that, Maryland, right? Yeah, man. It's just like, yeah, bro. I just as time goes on, I just have less and less faith in this country and less faith in the process, and yeah. I have more and more faith in just becoming an expat, man. Like that's really what I find is my solution at the end of the day. I mean, I'm going to continue to fight for reparations for sure, through the political process. But even here in Michigan, we getting, screwed around, and of all the things that we're trying to do, or, from a legislative standpoint, and how hard that is, yeah, it's depressing in my opinion, but it is what it is. I'll leave that as my final note, man. I'll let you spit, man, and you take this thing on out.
That's your words of optimism, man. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I was gonna say, cynically, but obviously truthfully, that really nothing has changed. When you kind of sit and look at the situation, it was a drop in the bucket, really. That common phrase you saw, this is not a movement, it's a moment. Or this is not a moment, it's a movement. But I guess what I said first was right. It actually was a moment,
right,
and not a movement, right? And it's so much. There's so little action behind a lot of the stuff after the fact that it feeds into the idea that it is all orchestrated and not, genuinely people powered. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I said this on the Ukraine video, man, that reparations is going to be a hard battle. And I said in another video we did, I said, we got the kind of country that will give black people reparations and then give us a new currency like the next day. You know what I'm saying?
Despite us, right?
Like the U.S. dollar would cease to exist as a valid form of currency, and it would give us reparations in cash. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right. We'll be like the real more republic. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Something crazy, something like that. Yeah.
You gotta take a barrel of money to go buy a piece of bread or something like that. You know?
Yeah,
it'd be worthless.
and so like we didn't talk about it, but even like, you know, this whole idea of like black fatigue and all that.
Yeah,
you know, so much of what we experience on a day-to-day basis in this country, and narratives that it's like every time we gain any visibility, they try to find a way to discredit us for it. You know what I'm saying?
Or pull it back, or pull it back to make it ineffectual, right? You know, no different like when we you know, when we finally got integration, right? And what do they do to divest from the public sphere? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know, when we got access to public schools, you know, they was like, okay, well, we're gonna create a bunch of private schools. We're gonna take all the money out. We're gonna go to the suburbs. You know what I'm saying? Or,
right.
We're gonna make that ineffectual for your upliftment.
Exactly. And so, you know, I mean, I like you said, I don't have any positives.
Right.
You know, this is a continuation of a problem that existed since we got here.
Yep.
Like Du Bois said, and I believe it was in The Souls of Black Folk. He said, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but like basically, you know, our existence is a reminder of the atrocities of the past. You know what I'm saying? The continued existence of Black people in this country is a reminder of the atrocities of the past. Right. And so, like, if we could cease to exist, America could be liberated from that, right? From that memory and from that history, because there'll be nobody to tell you. Right? Every day that we're around, every day that we exist is just proof of what happened. I mean, it's the same like you never see an Indian. And so those stories don't get told by and large. They do. I mean, you know, but not to the same degree because you don't see them.
Right. That's true.
You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
And so, I mean, the continued onslaught and erasure of Black people and the discrediting of Black people and what we are up against, you know, what specific barriers we are up against that will make us, you know, fully functional members of society, even after, you know, approximately, you know, 150 years of emancipation, you know, that, you know, they don't help us out. I was talking to my sister, and I'm gonna wrap up, but like, you know, you think about it, but you just take Black people one day and you make them free for whatever that means. And like Dr. King said, you know, they were free to hunger, they were free to the wind and the rain, you know, but you didn't give them homes, you didn't teach them to read, you didn't give them money, you didn't give them skills. Like the whole Freedmen's Bureau and all those programs were a joke after Andrew Johnson got involved.
Right.
I mean, even to some degree with Lincoln. So, you know, yeah, man, I'm a cut it, but yeah, it's messed up.
Right. So with that said, you know, at the end of the day, like, you know, it all comes back down to reparations, man. It's not an option, it's not a choice. You know, like you said, while the dollar still is worth something. You know, we don't know by the end of this presidency. We don't even know if that would be even the case.
End of this presidency, end of this year.
Right. Right. Yeah, we may not know. You don't know that might be the case anymore, man.
We might be in two hot wars.
Yeah.
Let alone the trade wars.
Right. Right.
So, I mean, you know. Hey, man.
Yeah.
It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine.
Right. Right. All right, then, man.
Oh, man. Oh,
I'll
man.
get up off of here, bro.
Okay.